Rooted in faith, rooted in family, rooted in values, rooted in traditions. Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors Podcast. And now your hosts, Corey Bauman and Dave Ashworth.
Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors Podcast. I'm here with my buddy Dave Ashworth. Man, it's been too long.
Way too long.
I love how we were going to get that podcast rolling every single week again, and then hunting season rolled around.
And we were going to put out videos every week through This Is Hunting. Now, I will say we have a lot in the queue. I'm actually scared to go and count them up.
Guy's got 17 videos to film or to produce and edit.
It's so many, but we're going to do that. We're going to continue to do that.
I am not helping you out there, though. That's for sure.
This time of year is tough, man. It's like free moments. It's getting a tree. You know what I mean? Like,
I know
where it's at. It's where it's at.
I know, man. I've been listening to a lot of other podcasts in my spare time, but we haven't done one in a while, and my gosh, we could go probably 4 hours.
I know.
With our season, it's like trying to wrap a whole season into a podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's tough.
So
tonight we're focusing on some Texas hunt is our focus. And then in the future, I can give a couple small updates on what's been happening.
Yeah.
But there's enough for a full podcast there. So we're not going to get too much into that. We have enough to talk about in Texas.
Yep.
A lot to talk about.
Big time stuff in Texas, man.
Man, I'm pumped. I'm excited.
So we haven't done a podcast. since hunting season started.
Yeah.
So I think the two main things that going on with me is the Hagerman hunt that took place beginning of November, and then just one of the coolest, one of the coolest days I've ever had in the woods this past weekend. And so we'll definitely talk about that, because
we will talk about that for
a lot of lessons.
A lot. It's awesome, though.
Yeah, man.
It's awesome.
So we had the Hagerman. So the Hagerman hunt, which we did some videos and stuff on that. And for any of you that didn't get a chance to follow along or hear what the heck the Hagerman was, it was this 3-day whitetail archery hunt that I was so blessed to get drawn for. And I know that there was Texas residents that I talked to that were definitely jealous that I got drawn for that hunt.
I bet. I was jealous. I didn't know much about it, but man, that place.
So,
something.
Man, I scouted. I figured out I put over 60 miles on the ground scouting that place this summer in like over 100-degree temperatures most of the days I was out there, and just trying to figure it out. And I even after 60 miles, like, I felt like I had a good plan and a good spot. And the way it works is there's these, so there's 3 management units that basically they split it up over, I think there was 85 guys that got drawn for that segment. So it's like 3 different segments, 3 different weekends. I got drawn for segment A. And then you have 3 management units you can choose from to go hunt. You can move around during the 3 days. And mine was November 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And so one of the units is huge. It's one of the units called Big Mineral, and it's the biggest unit. And a lot of guys go to that unit. So I was like, you know what? I don't need to go to the big unit. There's enough land on these other 2 units. I'll go scout these really hard, and I'll hopefully find a good spot. So I did that. I spent a lot of time in Harris Creek was the name of the management unit. And there's really no pressure on these deer. Every time I was in there scouting a jump deer, didn't see a ton of like buck sign. I saw there a couple spots where there's some rubs and stuff like that. And then the cool thing was the last time I scouted. I wanted to give it about a month between the time I scouted the last time and then the time of the actual hunt, just in case I jumped a deer that I was going to shoot or wanted to shoot.
Yep.
Well, that October, I think it was October 1st exactly, I was in there on a Saturday night right at dusk, and I come up over this hill and I had the wind in my face, and I spotted these two doe going down through a drainage ditch in the middle of the field. And I was watching those deer in my binoculars, and I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, and I look over, and there is a buck right in front of me, like 15 yards, popped his head over the drainage, and he's staring at me, a huge deer. And he turns around, he heads down into the bottom in a kind of swampy area. So I'm like, well, that's where I'll be the first day.
Yep.
So I left, and I was like, that's the spot. That's where I'm going to go. Knew what wind I needed, all that good stuff. The tricky thing was there's like an orientation the day before the hunt. So that Thursday before the Friday opens, you can go in and set your tree stands. Well, I had a complete opposite wind to set the tree stand. You and I had talked about it, and I was like, I don't know what to do, man, because I have a bad wind to set the tree stand, and I don't want to blow it out and then go back in there, even if I have a good wind the next day.
Right.
So orientation comes, and there's, all 80 guys are there. So I'm kind of like, let everybody go out to their spots, and then I wait like a half an hour, and then I kind of drive to the first spot where I was going to park, and there's 4 guys going in. The same trail that I'm going to go in, and I'm like, what are the chances of that?
Right.
Because there's a lot of land out there.
Sure.
And of course, we talked, and there were cool guys and stuff. And he's like, the one guy was like, we're literally going right where I wanted to sit, and the other guy's going on the other side. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. So plan B, I drive around a little bit. I end up going like basically to a different parking lot and coming in to probably like 300 to 400 yards away from where those guys were in the bottom, of this area where I still was in the same area where this buck could have been. And there's more than just that buck, but it's like one of those things where you see this deer and you're like, well, they're not pressured deer. So if I saw him there on October 1st, he's in that area somewhere.
Right.
So I go in, I end up bumping a bunch of deer on the way in, and it wasn't perfect, but I ended up finding a pretty good spot that I felt was, was a good spot. I had good wind, the following day, the first day and stuff like that. So head in the first day, I ended up seeing like, on the first day I saw, I think 18 deer or something like that. I remember I kept texting you. I was like, dude, more doe. The trees were crazy in there because it's all new. Like it's all different hunting to me, and it's like the trees are not good tree stands, not good trees for stands. And, I'm using, for those of you guys out there, I don't use a climber. I use muddy sticks and a muddy hang on, which is a lot better, than using a hang on. I mean, you wouldn't be able to use a climber in there. You just wouldn't. Right.
It's still, I saw some of your sets. They still look pretty tricky. Like not many, like around here, you can find telephone pole trees like all over the place. But like your tree was like up and then over and then like up again. And I was like, geez, that's like pretty intense.
Well, I think I got pictures and video of these locust trees. I think they're locust trees. They have these huge thorns on them.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
The whole tree's got these thorns on it, and they're literally like 5-6 inches long. And I ended up
nasty.
I ended up walking around looking for, I ended up missing a doe that first night, and I walked around looking for my arrow, and I took one of those thorns, was laying on the ground. I took it right up through the bottom of my boot. Did not go into my foot. Luckily, I felt it like going into my boot.
Yeah.
I just sat down and like pulled this thing out of my boot. But dude, crazy. Like it just, I don't know, crazy. It was crazy nasty in some of those areas. The first morning at about 8:30, I had a nice 10-pointer come through, a nice mature deer out about 65 yards. And it was really thick where I was at, not a lot of shooting lanes. Yeah. And then the second day, so I ended up missing that doe the first night. The second day, oh, and by the way, if you shoot a doe in there, you automatically get drawn the following year. So of course you got
the golden ticket.
Dude, the golden ticket.
And you can bring a buddy. You can bring a buddy.
And you get automatically drawn, and you can apply with somebody else and bring a buddy. So naturally,
I was rooting.
Dude, one of the golden tickets so we can go back next year. But anyway, the next day, was awesome, man. Again, saw a lot of deer. Really, I was in the same spot. I had the same like group of doe come back through in the morning, same time. I just could not get a shot. These deer, man, I'm telling you, I told you, like, it was actually the complete opposite. Like, I thought, well, these deer aren't pressured, right? So they're not going to be looking in trees. They're not going to be aware of like humans. Not well.
Right.
The complete it was because of that, dude. They were so aware of any little scent of human scent or anything different in their environment.
Yeah.
So, dude, this deer cart I took my stand-in on, right? And I thought I hit it pretty well on this like tree line. And it's like 80 yards from my tree stand, but it's like buried, you know? And I realized after the second day that these doe would come through and they would like, I don't know, not spook, but they would kind of like be on alert. And I'm like, there's no way these deer see me or smell me. Like the wind's literally in my face.
Yeah.
And I realized I put the binoculars up on this one doe and I'm looking at her and she's like just completely alert, staring over at the power line. And then I like dragged the binos like into her sight view. And there's the shiny wheel of my deer cart.
The deer cart, man, that thing is the worst.
So the deer were looking at the deer cart, and anyway, that was like getting them on edge. Well, then by the time they got to me, they're already on edge. Like they know there's something up. They want to know where this deer cart's like. It's like, so dude, I had a doe under my stand at like 5 yards, and I'm like 10 feet off the ground. I could have jumped on top of this deer, and I draw back, and of course the camera arm hits the bow. She takes off. The other, 15 doe that are standing there take off. It was a mess, man. It was a mess. So I ended up moving that second day. It was really cool. Actually, I saw a bunch of coyotes that night. One of my tree stand stuff. Just it's a really like wild. I don't know what other word to use, but it's a really wild area.
Remote, wild. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's other guys hunting in there, but it's crazy.
Yeah, we talked about that briefly. That was one of the things I wanted to touch on before you kind of continue with the hunt. But like you had mentioned, as you were coming out of there to end the hunt, just how like remote it really was and how out just like in the middle of nowhere it was and how that was like just kind of a little bit different. I've experienced that some. My parents have a cabin in northern PA and it's very remote up there. Like there's just nothing up there, middle of nowhere. Like the stars are super bright because there's no cities around to like light up the sky. But just talk about that a little bit because I know that was a really cool thing for you.
Yeah.
To experience that, just like something a little bit different that you haven't really experienced before.
Yeah, man. So like Friday, so a couple things that stand out, but the one thing that stands out. So Friday, you're kind of like trying to figure out it's a really controlled hunt. So you're like trying to get to your stand in the morning, kind of rushing around a little bit, making sure everything's right. And like, I always try to obviously soak it in and observe everything. Well, the second day I had my stand in the same spot. So it was like the same entry. I was there a little bit earlier, really took my time getting in there. There was no moon that night. So it was completely pitch black. And I remember walking in and just soaking it all in as I was taking my time getting in there. I ended up getting in the stand and I had about a half an hour until it got light, and I had everything set up. I had my camera arm set up, everything ready to go. And I turned around and I flipped the seat up on my stand and I was standing there at the tree. Dude, you could see, and I know like there's definitely places on earth that you can see every star in the sky, literally.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there and I heard some coyotes off in the distance. I heard a couple owls going off. Now it's about a half hour before light. Now you as a waterfowl hunter, you'll understand this, but I had ducks flying over.
It's the best.
And I could tell there was like 4 or 5 different like species of ducks because they would fly over and they would all sound different. And I remember standing there just like kind of soaking in and going, man, this place is wild, like in a great way. Like it's so wild. I was in the middle of completely nowhere and just soaked it in, man, and let the kind of, that what we talk about, like breaking dawn and everything. It's just let the night kind of wake up into the morning, transition into it. Birds start chirping. It was frost on the ground, dude. And it was just, man, it was awesome. It was cold. It was really cold, all 3 mornings. But yeah, it was something else.
That's awesome. Yeah, we just kind of go off on a tangent quick and then we'll get back in to kind of continue your hunt. But something that we've been talking about recently is just this kind of idea of like like adventure hunting, being
Mhm.
places that are like remote and just really out there. There's just not much out there, and just exploring, kind of like exploring new places, and just the excitement of that. Like there's excitement in like we have the farm, like learning that place and hunting that place and knowing it, like, well, kind of knowing it, but knowing the terrain, knowing the
Yeah.
land. Like there's an excitement in that and trying to learn that. But then on the flip side, like there's an excitement in something like the Hagerman or like my
Mm.
parents' cabin was really remote, and just like getting out and like exploring and like learning on the fly. And so we've been talking about that recently, and I never had really put that together in my head.
Mhm.
And for those hunts, like the expectations are a lot lower. Like you don't really know the area,
Yep.
but it's all the other stuff that comes with it that like really elevates like the excitement of that hunt.
Yep.
And I just think that's really interesting.
So the cool thing too, and I don't know if I can explain like this feeling or not, and you may have felt it before, or maybe you're listening to this, you may have felt this, but I don't want to use the word fear because there's not like really a fear, but it's this realization when you're in a place like that, that you're so inferior
Mhm.
to everything else that's around you. And not in the sense that there's things out there that can kill you, because there is, but like just how small we really are when it comes down to it at the end of the day. We live our lives, we go through our daily routines and stuff like that. And you get out in the middle, and you're standing on this little platform, and you look up and you see the skies and you hear all these things around you, and you go, nothing really knows that I'm even here or even cares.
Mhm.
Like you're such a small piece of earth that, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. You feel
It is
so
hard to explain.
inferior.
So it is like the coolest feeling though. Like you know, I haven't had that a ton, but I have had it some. And yeah, it's just an awesome feeling. You're just out there and like can't describe it. It's
No, you can't.
undescribable. Like you have to be in it. You just have to be in it. And if you're into hunting at all or into the outdoors and you haven't experienced that,
Mhm.
you need to find a way to do that. Like just find a place that's really remote and just like get out there and watch the sunset. And it's like almost life changing. It's like that. It's powerful. I don't know how else to describe it here except it's powerful.
It's for sure life changing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very spiritual, very
Yeah.
spiritual. Like
Yeah, for
there's,
sure.
man, I'm telling you right now, and you know this, but like if you don't hunt, or if you are hunting or whatever, I'd encourage you, even if you feel like you're not that spiritual, or if you don't have a relationship with Christ like you feel you do, or if you're even not even sure about like what your thoughts are and your beliefs are, I would just encourage you, next time you're in a tree stand and it's a situation like that, you just take a second and don't try and find the perfect words, but just kind of pray what's on your heart. Because like I feel like there's just such a not feel like, I mean, there is just such a connection. There was nothing like praying that morning.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, I never prayed for a deer. And I know we
Mhm.
constantly, sometimes we joke around, about, oh,
Mhm.
let's just pray for a buck. Like, because whatever, we're joking around. But like, it had nothing to do with the hunt. It was
Yeah.
just complete, utter gratefulness
Mm.
that opportunity was presented to me, and not overthinking why I was there. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
I was here because he wants me here for a reason,
That's it,
So,
man. It's awesome. Well, let's get back into the hunt. There's still a lot
yeah.
to talk about. So, where'd you end off? Day one, I think
Day
you ended
two.
off.
Yeah.
Day
Day
two. All right.
two. I moved my stand at noon.
Mhm.
I moved a little bit deeper. What I figured out pretty quickly, actually, which was really cool, is that I figured out all these deer were funneling back to a thicker part. They were passing pretty much just out of my range the first day, and then the second morning was kind of reassurance. So honestly, the first day was really an observation day.
Yeah.
The second morning, I was really confident. Honestly, because I wanted to shoot a doe and get that out of the way, I was really confident that I was going to be able to shoot a doe on Saturday morning, the second day, and then I was going to move back in deeper.
Right.
And like I said, it just didn't work out. I had a shot. I drew back, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving at lunchtime. I moved deeper in, and kind of hard to explain without looking at a map, but I was at a field edge, and there was these drainages. So I was in the middle kind of the end of a drainage, and then it went back into like the swamp, and there was a fence there and stuff like that. So it's kind of at an intersection where 4 edges meet. So there was a field that met the corner of a woods that met the swamp, basically, and this drainage. So it was like a 4-way intersection. I was about 25. Actually, I know I was 25 yards off the edge of the corner of the field, off the field. And I was in the woods, found a pretty good tree. Looked like a great area where bucks could be cruising. And out there too, it's like one of those things where you never know what's coming out of there. There's just so many huge deer that got shot. And that first day, I met 2 guys at orientation. They both killed deer, and both the deer were at least 150. I mean, big deer.
Very big deer.
I see in pictures, right?
Very big.
Huge deer. And it can happen at any moment in there. And it's cool because they have a Texas bow hunter has a forum, so you can kind of follow along. A lot of guys on there that are hunting the Hagerman, they're like they're talking about, the deer they've seen, shots on deer. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So anyway, I didn't see anything that night. I had a deer blow that I never saw. I know didn't win me. Again, back to this thing, and it was right 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't see anything that night, but I was pretty confident about the next morning, just because of where I was at and stuff like that. And I hadn't rattled yet, really. I did a little bit, but for anybody that's listening, and today's the 18th of November, we're at a very different time of the rut. Not very different, but a little bit slower. What I would say is the seeking phase right now. So there's not a lot of bucks chasing. They're seeking, which we'll get into, but they're seeking. And so they'll come to rattling, first of November. I mean, they're kind of pre-rut at that point, very pre-rut. Yeah. So anyway, get in the next day. It's just breaking light. I was actually running a little bit late, and we talk about this all the time. It's like the days you're running late, that's when things happen. Get in there kind of late. I had a little bit of a further walk, and for some reason I was soaking sweat. Like, I remember getting in the stand and like completely taking everything off the top and putting on warm clothes. And I finally get settled in and get the camera set up and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to rattle. And I'm looking out over basically this field where this drainage is. And I rattle just a little bit. And I didn't go crazy with it. I just kind of tickled it a little bit, just to kind of see what was around. It was dead quiet, no wind. I mean, just crisp, frosty morning. And I don't know where these deer are going to come from. They could come from behind me in the swamp, maybe out of the field, whatever. So I rattle a little bit. I sit there like, I don't know, maybe like 10 minutes goes by, and I catch moving out of the corner of my eye, and I'm looking out like towards the field. And I look over, and by the time I look over, he's already there. And there is this giant mature deer standing, literally he's standing already to the corner of the woods. And I had to kind of swing around and get ready. And he's already stopped, and he's looking left, he's looking right. He's already looking for, obviously, other deer. He doesn't see them. And you know how it is. It's like they don't find what they're looking for. And the mature deer, he slipped in on me. Like, and that's how it happens when you rattle a lot of times. Slipped in. I know for a fact it was 25 yards because I ranged it. He was at the corner. He was standing right behind a tree. All I could see basically was his head turning, looking around. And I was ready to draw. All he needed to do was take 2 steps either into the woods where I was, or keep going down towards the swamp. And of course, he didn't, which happens. He took like 2 steps backwards, and then he wheeled, and he was out across the field. And all I did was watch him with binoculars. Biggest deer I'd ever seen in the woods. I mean, and not just a rack, like his body was huge. I mean, just a huge, massive deer. Jeez. Really cool to see. But yeah, so that was that. I ended up actually moving then in the afternoon. I was going to stay put, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to move closer back to the road and see if I can get some action in another spot I had scouted. And I didn't end up seeing anything that night. But I kind of was just soaking it in at that point. I ate lunch on the ground, like sat by a water hole and just ate some lunch. Yeah, man, I didn't see anything that night. I had a couple more deer blow at me. Like, it was crazy, man.
Yeah. That's so cool though, man. Like, just like, I remember when you first moved down there, doing some research about places to hunt, and like this Hagerman thing came up.
I
And
know.
we made a joke about it, like, oh man, could you imagine like us getting in there or you getting
Yeah.
there, whatever. And we never thought it would actually happen.
No,
And then all of a sudden, like, you're in it, you know what I
I'm in
mean?
it.
And like the end of the day, like, you saw a ton of deer,
Yeah.
you know, you saw the biggest deer of your life, you know. That's a pretty cool experience. And then the whole like remote, like just adventure, wild type thing, like
Yeah.
that's so cool, man. That's
Yeah.
just so cool. What would you say is like your biggest like lesson learned or your biggest takeaway? It can be hunting related, it can be like just life related. Like, what would you say is just like the biggest thing, like leaving that place, like this is what your takeaway was from it?
Yeah, and I think I told you this. So one of the most like surreal things I think was so I got down that final day. I got down, I packed up my stuff, and I was walking out to the trail, and I looked over and the sun was setting, and like Texas has some unbelievable sunsets.
Yeah.
And it was one of those nights, it was like purple and pink, looked like cotton candy in the sky. And again, there really wasn't a moon, so you kind of see the sun setting in the distance and stuff like that. And I remember just saying thank you. I remember looking up and saying thank you.
Mm.
And that was like the first thing that I thought about. And then as I walked out, I realized, which, I mean, there's other places that this can happen, but because it's such a controlled hunt, and because it's now going to be so hard to get drawn, even though it was hard before, now it's going to be on the Texas online system. So there'll be thousands and thousands of people that draw, and they draw 200 guys a year get to hunt it. And I thought there isn't many places you can go where that there's a really good chance that you'll never, ever be back. It's like you see a spot, you go through, like you hunt a spot for 3 days and you go, well, next year I'm going to come back and I'm going to scout it better. I'm going to hunt it better. I'm going to be able to kill that deer I saw maybe, or whatever. But you walk out and you go, there is a really good chance that I will never come back to this wonderful place. Like I have a memory of 3 days that I can take with me. And I don't know, man, it was kind of surreal. And like, but I was full.
Yeah.
And I think I told you, like, the lesson from it is that oftentimes we try and figure out like why God does certain things in our life, and I thought about it like there too. And I really truly believe that I wasn't put there to really kill the deer. And I know that now for a fact, but like,
for sure.
I wasn't put there in that place to kill a deer. I was put there to really experience the things that I told you were the most memorable. Was that like Saturday morning, just standing there, realizing I was just smaller than anything else. I was a lot smaller than I thought I was, that kind of thing. And just, I think just being grateful, and then while I like understand how powerful God's creation is and stuff like that, really, really having a different perspective of how in awe and how amazing things are when you think about it. When you really have time to sit there and think about how amazing it is, and how really there's like no way you can't believe there's a God. I don't know, just for me anyway. And I know
I'm with you, man. I'm with you there. Yeah, it is a crazy thing to think that like it's a place that like chances are you'll never go back to. Like that really is the craziest thing, because like there's not many places like that. It's like public land, obviously you can go back whenever. Private land, chances are you'll go back. Or like, if you really wanted to go back to private, like you could probably just pay to go back. Like it's like, you could offer somebody like 20 grand and go and hunt probably anywhere you want. So like, but this place you can't do either of those things. Like you have to get picked to go. And not only, will you probably never go back, not many people have ever gone to begin with. So it's like, it's this place that like, you're in the select few of people that have got to experience like just this incredible hunt. And it's just, I don't know, it's really cool to think about it from that perspective.
I think too, like I think about, like I didn't really think about it at the time, but now I kind of look back on it and I go, man, like you really weren't even disappointed. Like I wasn't disappointed at all.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's very easy to go to a place like that where everybody talks about how big the deer are and it's a once in a lifetime and guys are shooting 180s. I mean, there was a 230 some inch deer shot out of there not too long ago. I mean, huge deer, non-typical deer, like just freaks.
Yeah.
And I even saw one and I wasn't even disappointed, like that I didn't shoot a doe. Like, would I want to go back? Yes. But it's like I was so full when I left that, yeah, it'll be awesome to go back there. Yeah. But like, if I don't go back, like I'll have those 3 days and there's so many lessons in those 3 days, you know?
For sure. It's awesome. So you mentioned that, you know, you felt like full leaving and, you know, there was obviously a reason for that. So now we need to transition into the reason for that because there was certainly a reason for that and some things that transpired, you know, I don't know, when was that? A couple of weeks ago that you went? Yeah, whatever. A couple of weeks later, some things happened. So talk about like after the Hagerman, like some, you know, your next plan of action and then your next hunt after that.
So I took the week off after that because it was a grind, man. I mean, I was a grind those 3 days and my parents were in town and stuff like that. So I just chilled out, spent time with the fam and kind of recharged the batteries a little bit. And then, you know, my focus was to get back into a tree this past weekend, pull at least one all day sit. Because again, you know, we're in a seeking phase right now. There's a lot of, so where like Pennsylvania, most of the signs laid down already, they've hit scrapes and stuff and they're still hitting them. But like, you guys are pretty much in lockdown at this point.
We're getting to
the point.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, we're definitely getting there.
You know, deer, I mean, there's definitely deer being bred. I mean, doe being bred like 100%. All day. So 100%. For us, the sign just started showing up this past week, like major rubs, scrapes, stuff like that. So Veterans Day I had off and I decided I was going to go check out a spot. So to back up a second. So one of the things that I really had to get good at and learn quickly was how to look at topo maps when I moved here to Texas, because just not knowing any of these areas, I had to learn how to read a topo map to even learn where to go because there's so much land. It's like you need to know where to start. Like you can't just walk around the woods aimlessly looking for deer sign. Like it's just, you'd never accomplish anything. No. So, you know, using the Onyx maps and stuff, that's how I learned how to scout the Hagerman. I really feel like I had a good handle on that. And I know that there's property around the Hagerman that's public. So there's Army Corps property for the most part. Army Corps owns it. You just need general hunting license and a like public land permit to go. And it's archery only in the county up there. So there's no gun hunting other than waterfowl. So there's waterfowl hunting.
Love me some archery only spots.
Archery only.
Can't beat that, man.
It's not a ton of pressure, right? Like
right.
I'm not even sure if you can use a crossbow, to be honest with you. I think you might be able to, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay.
So I start looking at the Onyx map, and I find this like little pocket of Army Corps property that literally borders the Hagerman. Like that looks interesting. And it looked interesting in a way that it wasn't something that looked like it was really easy to access. It was just a little patch. And I don't know how many acres it would be. And I'm going to say little. When I say little, I don't mean like 100 acres. I mean like 500 acres probably. Right. So not little, but like not huge.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm going to drive out there and just see if I can. The goal was to go out there on Veterans Day, find a spot and hang a stand and then come back for an all day sit on Saturday. If I could do that, just, you know, had an idea of where it is. I looked at the map. So I drive in there. And of course, a lot of it in Texas too, where it looks like there's a road that will access a property. There's a gate. So of course I drive all the way out there to where I'm thinking I'm going to access this property, and there's a gate, and it's an oil lease basically. So the oil guys can go back there, but like I can't get back there. I can't drive back. So look at the map. I'm like, all right, so I can swing all the way back out around and come in, but I'll have to walk far, like pretty far. But I can still get to this piece that I want to get to. I just can't park where I want to park, which at the end of the day,
that's not a bad thing.
It ended up being a big difference, honestly. Yeah. I think it ended up being a big difference. And I thought about that actually as I was walking in. I'm like, not many guys are going to do this. They're not going to do this. So I ended up parking and walking in, and I got about a mile and a quarter back. And so what the interesting thing is, and this is one of the lessons I learned, and I've known this, but I've never really been in the spot where I actually felt like I've done it. They always say, if you're on public land, walk past the boot tracks, walk past the other stands, walk past where you feel like there's no other guys there, right? Or there's no sign of there had been other guys there at any time. So I walk in, there's a double ladder stand about 200 yards off the road. I walk in another, I don't know, a couple hundred yards. There's a seat up on the tree where I can see somebody who's sitting. Then I see orange markers. I walk all the way back. I hit that stand. That was another ladder stand. So now I'm about a quarter mile in. Go down through a drainage ditch and up another side. And there's a blind set up in the opening. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep walking. And I'm still not in the area I really want to go anyway.
Right.
And I don't see, here's the unique thing. I don't see any sign. I don't see any rubs. I don't see any deer sign. A couple tracks here and there, but not much. So I keep heading back in. I end up hitting, there was private property that bordered this Army Corps property, and then the Army Corps property bordered the Hagerman. So obviously where I wanted to get to was a spot where I was close to the Hagerman, because there's deer probably coming back and forth. And it's fenced, but it's low fence, so it's just barbed wire fence, from having cattle and stuff like that. So I end up going past this blind, and I keep going, and I start seeing, like, not a ton of sign, but a couple rubs here and there. I'm like, okay, I'm getting into some stuff. I ended up bumping a deer, and it was in an area where I thought they were bedding. So I'm like, well, that's a good sign. Not a good sign I bumped a deer, but I bumped a deer, so they're here. And that's kind of been my thing, is like, in Texas here, I'm like, I'm going to walk till I bump a deer. I know where they're at, right?
They're there.
They're here. I mean, it might sound stupid, and maybe somebody would think that's stupid, but
it's a good way to, if you don't know where you're going, or I mean, in general, where the deer are, I mean, it's the best way to find them. I mean, it is what it is.
So
good idea.
I bumped this deer. I pull up the Onyx map on my phone, and I look at it, and I'm like, like, it's like literally a triangle where I bumped this deer right at the front of it, and it's thick. Like, you zoom in on it and you're like, it's bedding. One side of it's the lake. The other side of it, for about 50 yards, is a little bit of open timber that leads to the Hagerman. So I'm like, I'm going to follow this bedding down. So I follow the bedding all the way down. I get to a spot where it opens up a little bit, and there is a giant rub tree. Giant. I mean, fresh, like done the day before that day, whatever. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hunt this fresh sign. There's no guys within a half a mile of me right now. Like, I know there isn't. The lake's right there. I kind of was at like a pinch point where the terrain went down in this like big ditch, and then there was the fence. I could literally see the fence, the Hagerman fence, and you could see the Hagerman sign on there. It was like, it's a no-brainer. So I hang my stand, sneak out of there. It was raining too that day, so it was a perfect entry. I had a good wind to actually hang the stand and not blow my scent into the beds at all. It was blowing the opposite way. Snuck in there, was wet, hung my stand, snuck right out. And I'm like, I'll be back in Saturday. So then I plan to sit all day Saturday. Trying to think. So Saturday morning, I had so you talk about like cheater winds. So the wind was blowing from the Hagerman towards this bedding area. And my scent would basically go like right along this bedding area. Now the deer, the bucks, in order to get to the bedding area where they could actually sniff it, they'd have to come around me. It's hard to explain without looking at a map.
That makes sense.
But the way it pinched, they would actually have to come around me and then go around the other side of the back side of the bed. Like, there's other ways to get there, but this was the most likely place. So, dude, so I get in the stand, and I'm like getting ready, and I hear what I think these deer are coming, right? So I'm like trying to get ready. I'm like knocking an arrow, and it's like getting light. So it's like shooting light, but it's still like getting light, right? So I look over, and here comes this giant hog, this giant wild hog, dude, jet black hog. And he's like up along the trees, up along the fence line. He dips down in this ditch, and he comes up like literally, I don't know. Well, we ended up 26 yards. He ended up being. And he's like moving pretty fast, and I have like 2 windows to shoot him in. So I draw back. He gets to the second one. I let the arrow go, and he like stops, and he makes this like like really weird noise, man. I can't even explain. It's like he was growling at me.
Yeah, probably was.
I don't know. He was mad, man. He was mad. And I thought I hit him. And then anyway, about an hour later, I got down and it was a clean mess. I shot right under him. It was so quick. I had the pin at 20 and I shot like right under him.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was cool. And then I had a bunch of deer. And this is one of the lessons that we were actually talking about that morning, which is insane. You had sent me a text saying what we're talking about. And I said, there's another deer. I kept saying there's another deer behind me. And they were like right inside the bedding area. Like they were not in the area where I was, and I couldn't get a shot because it was so thick and it was just out of my range. And the last one I saw, I glanced over the corner of my eye and I see a buck. I didn't get a good look. It looked like a good deer. Jumped the fence from the Hagerman going towards this bedding, and I never saw him. I just never got a good look. So then I texted you. I was like, dude, I feel like I should move. It's like 10 o'clock. I'm like, but I don't know, like whatever. And you're like, I forget. What did you say to me?
I said I would move, basically.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that before. I was like, when you said all the deer were behind you, I was like, I would move. And you're like, okay. And I'm like, all right, he's moving.
That's honestly, that's all I needed. And so the lesson is that I don't know that I would have done that even a couple years ago. I just don't know. Like I was so fixed in my mindset.
Yeah, I would not. I could tell you for a fact, I would 100% do it now. If I had an opportunity, like if I see deer and I know they're in a certain place and I can't shoot them, I know it's going to happen again, I would move for sure. But like 2 years ago, I'd be like, whatever. Like they could come by here. I'll just stay here. And like, I would not do that. But it can pay off. It cannot, but just feel like if you're seeing consistent movement in an area, like bucks. So the reason that I was so confident in telling you yes was because the week before I was out at a property and I knew where a bed was, and I had 3 bucks do the exact same thing, literally the same path in the morning in a matter of 2 hours, like walk up the path, walk right by this bed, and then keep going. And so I was like, dude, if another buck comes, he's probably going to do the same thing. That's why I was like, I would move. That's why I said it.
And I think the confidence is like one of those things where like, you should do it. Like I was sitting there going, I should do this.
Right.
And the big thing too is I think I've gotten really good at hanging sets by myself too.
That helps.
And I know I can be really quiet. Like it doesn't take much, and I know I can get out of the tree pretty quick. I mean, within 2 minutes, I can have that stand on all the sticks on the ground. Like
right.
I know I can do it. So I took my time. I decided to do it. The deer movement had stopped a little bit. I hadn't seen one for a while, and I was like, I'm just going to go for it. It was like, I think 10:30 at that point, maybe. Mm-hmm. And so I did, mainly because I was just getting hungry and I wanted to eat my sandwich and my new
That's the most important part of the day. The sandwich time. Side note, for some reason, like we've been really into making our own hoagies this year. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden we're like making hoagies with like lettuce and sweet peppers.
Full hoagies.
Like, yeah, like I don't. It's just our thing this year. I don't know what it is.
Guys are showing pictures of like PBJ sandwiches. I'm like, I need an Italian sub.
Full Italian sub with all the fixings right on there.
Remember when we were at the farm? We did double hoagies in one day. I'm like, who does double hoagies?
It was awesome. But anyway, so you got your hoagie, most important.
So I got my stand moved, and I moved over into where I was into the stuff. Like,
so how far did you actually end up moving?
So the interesting thing is, I honestly think I moved like 75 yards.
Okay.
Maybe not even that far.
That's a decent chunk, though.
Maybe not even that far.
Yeah.
Probably closer to 60, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
60 yards, something like that. And I moved to a point where I wasn't that far off the Hagerman fence. My concern is that I don't want to shoot a deer and have it run to the Hagerman, because then I'll have to get permission to go on there.
Right.
It was a concern, but the idea of the activity I saw that morning was enough to obviously put me in the stand there.
Right.
So I got up in the stand. I was in a really good tree. I still didn't have a ton of shooting lanes, but I had the shooting lanes I felt I needed from where the deer were moving that morning. And so man, there's so many lessons this day. So I'm like, I'm going to eat. So it was noon, something like that. And actually it was exactly noon because I remember going, I have 10 minutes so I can eat my hoagie because I won't eat before noon.
Right. You can't.
Discipline.
I do, but
I know,
you shouldn't.
but
You
you
shouldn't.
shouldn't. Anyway, you don't want to get hungry mid-afternoon. That's the thing. You don't want to get hungry.
Trust me, yeah. I've learned that lesson many times, but I just keep going back.
So I took this hoagie down, and it's interesting. There's some of this that I didn't even tell you yet, right? So I sat there, and it was about 12:30, and I don't know why, but I was really anxious in the tree.
Interesting.
I was antsy. And I'm not usually like that. I'm pretty good on an all-day sit, but I was antsy. And I don't know why, but something in my head was like, dude, you have a couple hours left until the activity's probably going to pick up again. Why don't you go scout a little bit, like walk back in so that you kind of really know the area. And I'm telling you, man, I fought that hard in my head. I was really close to tying the string on my bow and lowering it down and then taking a walk. I don't know what kept me there. I ended up getting distracted by a couple texts from some old friends and stuff like that. And I sat there for a little bit and it kind of went away. And soon enough, it was a little after 1 o'clock. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get down now. Like, even though I'm just not, it's going to get dark by 5, that kind of thing. So I was sitting there and out of the corner of my eye on the left, and I'm facing so to my left would be the Hagerman, like across the fence, ways away. And to my left, I see movement, and then I see deer's legs, coming towards me. Like he's basically on the Hagerman, but he's coming towards me. And I thought it was a doe actually at first. I didn't think anything of it. And then I looked up and I saw antlers kind of coming through the brush. Like I couldn't get a good look at the deer.
Yeah.
He's definitely coming my way. Like he's coming towards the fence. He's making a beeline to the fence. He gets behind a tree. Now at that point I had already turned. So this is the other thing I didn't tell you. And this is a lesson for everybody. And I think there's times I wouldn't have done this, and I don't know why. I think it's just out of laziness because sometimes you get set up and stuff isn't perfect in the tree, and you go, well, I can't get that shot. So, but whatever. Like it is what it is. You've probably been there, right?
For sure.
Or like the tree's not the perfect tree, so you just end up hanging your bow hanger wherever it goes, and you don't even realize that there might be a shot over there that you can't get.
Right.
So I hang the bow hanger up when I got up there, and I put my backpack on another hook. Like basically, like if I turned around, it's on the right side of the tree. Like so, if I'm staring at the tree trunk, it's on the right hand side. So I have to go around to the right side of the tree to shoot. Well, that's where the fence was, and that's where the opening was, and my bow hanger, when I went to draw back, and I know you do this, a lot of guys do this, is you get up there and you draw back from a couple different areas and you just make sure you have shots. Right. But when I drew back, I couldn't really get around the tree to a point where my pack was kind of in the way and my bow hanger was in the way. And I even stood there for a couple minutes and I was like, can I do this without moving everything? And I let the bow down and I hung it back up on the hook and I sat down. I literally didn't move it. And I sat there and I don't know what made me do it, but I was like, I got to move that because that could be the shot I have. Like, honestly, I end up unscrewing it. I'm like holding the bow. I'm like unscrewing the hook. Like I moved the hook up and then I moved my pack down and I drew back again. And I went back around the tree and I was like, all right, I have that shot. I actually cut a branch off too. There was a little branch coming out of the tree. And I was like, if I hit those leaves, like I was thinking about everything.
Yeah.
And it was to the left. It was like the shot I needed.
Right.
And so I ended up doing that. And if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have got the shot I got. And so this deer, it was really, really, really cool. I mean, just amazing experience. So he comes right up to the fence and now I can see him and I'm like, man, it's a shooter. Texas has a minimum 13-inch middle spread, which is a really interesting restriction. It's so hard to tell 13 inches. They say,
not
well,
on not on that one.
Not on this one. No. And I saw him and I was like, man, he's a shooter. And it was so cool, man. I watched him sniff the barbed wire fence for I don't know, probably 30 seconds to a minute. He sniffed every section of that fence where all these doe had jumped over.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if he was just sniffing where the other deer were jumping over.
Deer or doe or whatever. trying to figure out what deer. And I know this for a fact, deer can smell other deer scent. Like they know, like they can identify another deer,
Right.
in other words.
Yep.
Like they have their own scent, right?
Right.
So anyway, he was sniffing, and the whole time, I'm
So
like, wow.
when he's at the fence, saying, like, how far away is he? Like
15
close?
yards.
So he's like right there.
To 20 yards probably at that point.
Okay. Right.
He's at the fence, sniffing the fence, and in my head, and I've got my bow on the string, and all I'm doing is wait until he jumps the fence.
Right.
And in my head, I'm going, what if he doesn't jump the fence? I'm not going to shoot him there, obviously. But I'm like, this could literally end with him walking down the fence in front of me at 5 yards, and I don't get a shot.
Yep.
Of course, I would have, tried to grunt him back in or something like that. And he sniffed the fence. He sniffed it forever. And I'm like, I've got it clipped on.
Are you drawn yet or no?
No, I've got it clipped on and I'm ready to go. As soon as I see him go to make his move to jump the fence, I'm going to draw. Because there's a tree in between me and him before he gets to the opening after it. So I can draw as soon as he jumps over the fence.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting. Dude, he takes 2 steps backwards. And I'm like, oh, he's going to wheel.
No.
He didn't know I was there.
He did it to jump over.
He had no idea I was there, though. I mean, he had no idea. Like, you can tell when a deer kind of knows something's up. He had no idea.
Right.
So he took 2 steps back, and he made a move like he was going to walk down the fence line away from me. And just like that, he turns and jumps I can see him jumping the fence. So as soon as he jumps the fence, he's behind the tree. I draw back, and he popped into what looked like was the start of a scrape. Okay. And he was sniffing the scrape, and I still didn't have a shot. His like head was peeking out, but like that was it. Yeah. He sniffed the scrape a little bit. I could see him like kind of licking his lips, and it was just really cool. It was a cool experience. And the whole time, I know I'm going to get a shot. Like I know I'm going to shoot this deer because
as soon as he jumped the fence, as soon as he jumped the fence, it was on.
Yeah, I mean he took a couple steps towards me and then a couple steps away from me, and then he kind of opened up, and he was a little bit quartering towards me, and I put the pin like right on his shoulder blade, a little bit above his shoulder, because I had a little bit of an angle and stuff like that, and it was quartering to me, so I was a little bit front, but I wanted that shot.
Right.
And I let it go, man. And he took like kind of like 2 quick steps back, and I could see the hole in the side of him. Like I could see where. So
he didn't run off.
He took 2 quick steps and then he took off, but like he had no idea what happened. I mean, it happened so fast, and that close. I mean, it was probably 10 yards, maybe even less than 10 yards. I mean, just blew right through shoulder and out the other side. And then he took off, and he got out to just where I couldn't see him. So he's about 60 yards, went into the bedding area. And I thought he snorted at me because he would have got my wind at that point. But now that I think about it, now I know what happened. I think like he honestly was expiring. Because, after I field dressed him and stuff, I went through the heart and out the other lung on the other side. So
that deer was done before he even took his first jump.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the blood trail out to where I couldn't see it anymore with my binoculars, and it was, it was like somebody painted the leaves. Yeah, I could see the arrow sticking in the ground, like just, it's like one of those things where sometimes you question it, and then sometimes you go, and you still question it a little bit until you find the deer, but there's sometimes where you go,
yeah, there's always like a little bit there, if you've hunted long enough, like you've probably lost some deer, and so like there's always that thought of like, man, like is this one gonna get away, you know what I mean? And it's like, I mean, that deer was smoked. I mean, he wasn't going anywhere, but like it's hard to just be like, all right, like unless you see him go down, it's hard to be like, all right, yeah, he's done, like, even though that one he was done.
I remember you saying to me too, and I FaceTimed you right away, and I remember you saying to me, how big was he? And I said, well, he's at least a 10. And the reason I knew that is because of you could tell. I mean, I could count them on both sides, and it wasn't that accurate. Like, and you're like, he's probably bigger than you think he is if you think he's at least a 10, right?
Right.
And so then I waited about an hour, did the right thing there anyway, and I didn't hear anything after what I thought I heard him crash and expire. Waited an hour, got down, took my time, just trying to think through everything, followed the blood, and I didn't get out another, like I said, I mean, he maybe went 70, 75 yards. I don't know. But
how far did you walk until you saw him? Like, so you got your arrow like Did
I
you
got my
shoot?
arrow. I walked into like a clearing. There was a
Right.
clearing that before they went into like the bedroom, and I
Yeah.
had my binoculars, and I put up my binoculars to look into the woods, and I could see him laying there behind a tree. And I couldn't see his antlers. I could see the back of him.
Right.
So I couldn't tell. I couldn't see his head. So I couldn't tell if
Right.
he was, had expired yet or not.
Sure.
He wasn't moving, of course, but of course you never know,
No, you don't. He could have been just kind of laying there.
could have been. So I walked up kind of around him the one side, and then, realized he was dead. And dude, like I saw his rack, and I was like, man, it's an amazing deer. And
Dude. It's so unique too. Like if you haven't seen the pictures, go to our Facebook or Instagram. I mean,
yeah.
it is such a unique deer. I mean, how many points was it? 13, I think.
So he's really unique in a couple different ways, right? So he's unique in that, one of the things I was talking today about. So he's unique in a way that he, even like some deer, they wrap their main beams wrap around a little bit in the front or a lot usually, right?
Yeah.
This deer's main beams don't wrap around at all. They go literally straight out.
I know. It was awesome.
And he's got split brow tines on both sides. And then he has a kicker coming out of the front. So it's not a scoreable point. I don't think it's probably I don't even really know. I mean, I rough scored him, but so he's really unique. He's a lot of character. I'm gonna be the first one to tell you, I'm not good at aging deer at all. In fact, I even think I told you, I was like, I don't even think he's that old, dude. Like, I just don't think he is.
Not quite.
Well, yeah. So I didn't know. So anyway, I have 1.25 miles now. I'm back in the woods, and it's not difficult terrain, but it's still 1.25 miles. So I hiked everything back out. I field dressed them, hiked everything back out, and then got my deer cart, came back in, and it was a grind, man, getting him back out of there. I don't know how much he weighed.
You said he wasn't like a huge deer,
no.
but I think you kind of found out why a little bit. When you went to the butcher, so you got to tell that part of it. And then I got a good question for you.
Okay.
Tell that.
Yeah. Do you want to ask it, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I can ask it now. So
okay.
Like, when you first moved to Texas, obviously, you talked about like, leases are just like, you got to get a home equity loan just to get a lease down there. Like it's insane. And so you're like, I'm just going to hunt public land. And a lot of people, I don't know if discouraged was the word to use for that, but they were just like, like there's not really public land down here. Like you can't really do it down here or whatever. Like it just people weren't really encouraging with that much, especially in the area that you were in. Now I know there's some good public land in other parts of Texas, but people don't consider, I don't think, that area like, great public land. And you were just like, well, I disagree. Like, I'm going to figure it out. So like, and then you had the Hagerman hunt like right before. And then, so you finally, you were able to get it done like on Texas public land on like a super mature deer. Like when you like, just walk me through like some of like the things that were going through your head when you saw him coming in and you knew like, wow, like this is actually happening. And then like when you walked up on him, like what were things that you were thinking about? Because I'm sure that there was a lot going on there, just with like kind of like the Hagerman fresh in your mind, the Texas public land thing that people told you like this is not like the best hunting and public land here. Like what was going through your mind in like a couple of those key moments? Because there had to be something there.
A lot, man. A lot.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's like you said, I talk about hunting Texas public land, and it's interesting, people that have lived here all their lives don't even know that these places even exist. I mean, I tried to explain to a couple people that live in Texas, and they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right.
In fact, the one guy asked me, did you get permission to hunt there? Did you call the Army Corps to get permission? Like, no, you like, they don't know how to hunt public land. And it's not a knock. It's just that the way it is, it's a lot of people have either family ranches or they have leases and they pay for leases, and they call it a gun here, right? So you pay basically $1,500 to $3,000 a gun, and there could be 5 other guys, 6 other guys. Like, to your point, I always look at the challenge of it. And I think once I realized that there was public land, I was determined to find deer on them. And I told you whether it took me 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years, I'd rather wait, have the satisfaction that I was able to kill one on public land. Never imagined that type of a caliber deer, right? But like being able to do it, and then not in a way that I'm saying I told you so, like nothing, like it's more of a satisfaction thing for me to say, like, you put the time in to look at maps, to go scout and prove to yourself that you can do it, and that you don't, and honestly, you don't need a lease. Like, leases are great. I don't need a lease. I don't need a lease. And then, and even if I didn't kill that deer, like, I would say the same thing. I don't feel like I'm the lease guy. Like, I just don't. I'm not that guy. I don't have enough time to spend, $2,500 on one gun lease and go out a couple times and scout it. And the other thing is a lot of the leases too are on feeders and stuff like that. I've never hunted feeders.
Sure.
I don't like, and this is just kind of proof to me. It's proof to me that I don't need to go hunt that, whether I'm shooting a doe or a legal buck or whatever, the one I shot this weekend. I don't need that. So I think the feeling of, when that happens, like, to anybody, it happens so fast that you have really tough time to digest it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to digest everything. And I don't think you fully digest it until a couple of days after, and I'm still processing. Still processing.
Yeah, it's still fresh.
I think walking up to that deer and sitting there with it and kind of walking through, like, the steps I took, the lessons I learned and stuff like that, like by like hunting the Hagerman and like learning how to look at topo maps and stuff like that. It's interesting. I looked at the topo map again on Sunday, processing the hunt, and I looked at it again. And the interesting thing is I picked up something new. So there is the deer was basically coming down a transition line from another bedding area. So in the Hagerman, there was a bedding area, and either he was bedded in there or he was looking for does in that bedding area, and he was going from back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you could find transition between two beds, I mean, you can't do much better than that this time of year.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I think it's one of those things too, where, like, every now and then I feel like you find a spot where you can kill a deer every year. That you may not, but there's a possibility if you go in the same time, you play the same conditions, that you have a really good chance to see another mature deer.
That's it, man.
And that's a spot. That is 100% a spot because of the way it transitions in that time of year. And I ended up seeing, like, rubs that had been created since I put the stand in on Veterans Day. And I mean, like, shredded. And I'll tell you why. I actually don't think they're from that deer that I shot. I actually think they're from a bigger deer.
Why do you think that?
Well, so I'll jump into the processor, the butcher.
Okay, gotcha.
So normally I would skin the deer out myself, probably butcher it myself. But I haven't caped a bunch of deer out in my life, and so I didn't want to mess the cape up because it's a very unique deer. I said I wouldn't shoulder mount another deer unless it was the biggest deer I ever shot. Of course it is. So
yeah, I mean, that deer is just like, but way too cool not to, like, that deer needs a shoulder mount. And given the fact of, like, what you're about to talk about, like,
yeah,
it's a no-brainer.
So I decided to take him to the processor across the street, actually, from where I live, pretty close. And so Sunday morning, I rolled in there. Awesome people. And she said, back in, so we'll get him in the cooler and stuff like that. So I backed up, and she, the first thing she said to me was, "Wow, where did you shoot this deer?" And I said, "North, up north near Lake Texoma." And she said, and so here's the interesting thing. So the Hagerman next segment was this past weekend. So that they were hunting the Hagerman, the next draw was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, were you hunting the Hagerman? And I said, no, I wasn't hunting the Hagerman. I said I was close to the area, and she said, "This is a Hagerman deer." I was like, "Okay." Like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, "How do
Right.
you know?" And she's like, "I can tell a Hagerman deer by character, by the way the rack is, and by the age of the deer." And I was like, "Oh," I'm like, "How old do you think he is?" Like, I don't even think he's that old. And she's like, "This deer's at least 6 years old."
It's
Dude,
crazy.
6 years old.
It's crazy.
At least 6 years old, she said.
Yeah. I said to you right after that, I was like, man, like you and I will be lucky if we see a 6-year-old deer like the rest of our hunting like
Yeah,
lives. Like
it's true.
that is incredible. It is.
She looked at the teeth. She said, the forehead, if the forehead is really indented in a buck, it
Mhm.
shows age. So the more it's indented, and then also, you know how bucks have a crown on their nose.
Yep.
So the higher the crown, the older the deer is.
Hmm.
And she went through that like really quick. I mean,
Right.
obviously they see a ton of deer. They do a lot of taxidermy, their work and stuff. So
Yep.
so they know.
It's
She
crazy.
looked at them, and it was really cool to see somebody like that sees a lot of deer admire that deer. Like, they
Yeah.
see giant deer in there. And
Right.
she said, one of a kind. I forget what she was saying, but like, one of the coolest things, I don't know why, but I felt really cool
Mhm.
about this. I felt really satisfied. As she said to me, so she started looking at his hide on the neck, because of course, they're going to obviously
Mhm.
need to use it. So she's looking at what they have to do to it and stuff. And he had scars like all over his neck, which
Mhm.
I didn't see, but she could feel them. And she was like pulling the hair away, and you could see scars like where he was a warrior, man.
Yeah.
He's a warrior.
6 years, man. He's been in some battles.
Some of them were fresh, and what she said to me was, he's this is the crazy thing. So she said to me, he's definitely on decline. Of course, at 6 years old, he's not in his peak anymore.
No.
He's a 12 pointer, right? And he rough scores like 133, 134.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
Yeah.
great deer,
For
right?
6 years old, yeah.
She says she thinks his tines were probably at least 10 to 12 inches long on most of them. And they're like 6, something like that. So that deer was probably 160 at one
Yeah.
point. And the mass on his base, he has really a lot of mass on his bases. And then it
Yep.
gets thinner as it goes up and around. And so that was really cool too. And she said, this deer has been fighting for, like, basically fighting for his life, because there's a 4 and a 5-year old mature deer in that same area that is literally kicking his rear end, because he's older. He's
Right.
just trying to survive. He's trying to still
Right.
breed. He's trying to eat. And he was that old. To imagine that a buck gets to that age where he's like a
Right.
grandpa.
He is. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
His strength isn't there. His
No.
antlers aren't there anymore. And like, these younger, stronger 3.5, 4.5, 5.5 year old deer, like they're pushing him around. Like that's really crazy, but like really cool to think about.
Yeah,
Like it's
she was
so
like
cool.
she literally said to me, it was his time. It was time for him to be taken out of the herd, which is crazy, because like, how
That's
many
awesome.
how many hunters can really ever say that?
Yeah. Not
You know
many.
what I mean? Like,
Not many.
it's such a, I don't know, man. It's such a gift to be able to, it takes a year, to get a deer back usually, and it'll probably
Yeah.
take a year to get him back. And I like literally can't wait, because to me, it's cool to have a mount, but it's all the it's every time you look at that, I'll think first Texas deer, because I haven't. That's the first Texas deer.
Yep.
First Texas deer, 6-year old. Just unique buck. I'll think of like all of the time and effort I put into. It'll remind me of the Hagerman,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'll think of all these things every time I look at that deer. Just like
Yeah.
when I look at the one from PA, I think about that day we had together.
Yep. I know. It's great. Yeah, it's crazy. Like just thinking back on all the like just the events that took place in like so a lot of times God has a plan for what's supposed to happen and we don't understand it. I know we'll talk about some of that stuff coming up, but like we just don't understand his plan. Like things are happening and we're like, God, like what is going on? And it's still his plan. But like, in some situations it's like, okay, like God, like I know exactly what was happening here. And like yours was like that. Like you went to this incredible Hagerman hunt with high expectations of like killing a giant deer, and you left not killing one, and yet you were still completely satisfied. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, you ended up killing a deer that was probably one of like the older deer in the Hagerman that was from the Hagerman on public land, which I'm sure you would rather kill a deer on public land than the Hagerman if you had to pick.
Yep.
And like your first Texas deer, like just like all of those things that God like had this like really cool plan for you. And like just to see it like all come together and see how like all those pieces were like fitting together. So, you know, it doesn't always work like that, but when it does, man, it is just like the coolest thing to see. It is just so cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously I hope that there's many, many more of those types of days and memories and stuff like that. But like, you know, it makes you think that there's probably a handful of those days left, like in your life, you know, that you have where you can really truly look back on that. You know, I said to you, like, it would have been really cool to have you there. Obviously, we know what that is. You live in a different state, and we knew that it was going to happen at some point, that you wouldn't be there and I wouldn't be with you when you shot one.
Yeah.
It makes it tough because, you know, there's times where, man, it was a bear dragging him out. I had a deer cart, but it was like hauling him over like deadfalls and stuff. And I'd stop and I'd take a breath, you know, and I'd just think and digest it. It gave me time, actually, which is interesting, you know, it took me a long time to get him out. And every time I stopped, I just think about something else, you know.
So cool, man. Just so many cool pieces of the story, and like just the story that I'll be telling people for years. I mean, I've already told a ton of people like this story, and I just like, I don't know, I'm just super pumped for you. But like also, and I've told you this like many times, but also just like really proud of like the work that you've put in and like seeing it pay off, but also like your attitude through it all has just been like such an encouragement. And like, you know, the Hagerman, like we talked that up like a lot, like, and to not get it done in there, leaving completely satisfied, completely, like you said that multiple times, like, I don't know, it's just really cool to see, and encouraging to me to see, you know, your attitude in that more than anything else.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. It takes a lot of hard work to think that way too. And it's not,
it does.
It's not easy at times. And of course, you know, it's funny because that same day, even though that happened, that same day, I also had thoughts of, am I going to kill a deer in Texas? I mean, literally, like, am I going to kill a deer in Texas? Like, am I ever going to be in the right spot? Because you question all these things, you know, and next year I'll question other things. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're always going to question things.
Yeah.
But there's certainly a lot of confidence that, you know, I'm not afraid to say that there's a lot of confidence that I can look at a map now and I can be able to go in, and I'm not afraid to hike in deep, to shoot a deer. And, you know, it's funny, I told, I was texting, but they were asking me about the drag out, and I told them what a bear it was. And then I said, you know what though, if somebody said, would you do it again tomorrow and go through the exact same thing, even though your lower back is absolutely killing you and you're,
for sure,
I'd do it again tomorrow, literally go in and shoot the same deer and do it again.
100%.
One quick funny thing that I didn't tell you, I don't think. So I'm about a quarter mile from the truck, and I'm taking a pause.
Bringing them out?
Yeah. It's getting dark. Sun's down. It's getting dark. And I hear a coyote bark. And he's like 100 yards away.
Oh, great.
And then I hear another one bark. And they're barking, and then they're yipping, and then they're howling. I've got them to my left. I've got them out in front of me, and I've got them to my right. And they are going off, dude. And I'm telling you, like, they're literally like just out of view. Like, I can't see them, and I'm dragging this deer.
They saw you, I bet.
Oh, I'm sure they saw me and smelled that deer.
Yep.
And it went on for a while. And I ended up getting down into this like really open area. And it's funny, like there's no way these coyotes are going to want to have anything to do with me. Like, they'll see me, they're not going to care about this deer, like, whatever. And then in the back of your head, you go, yeah, but there was that one time that coyote attacked that person.
Well, they're like, funny. Listen, we already have the deer. Let's get the guy who's alive so we can have both.
Yeah. No, but like, not that I thought I was ever going to get attacked by these coyotes, but like it was eerie because you're out there by yourself.
I've been out, in the dark, like heard coyotes nearby, and it is like, it'll like send a chill down your spine a little bit. And when you're dragging out like, some game that they want, like, yeah, you're probably not going to get attacked, but it's not a good feeling. Like you're just like looking around, like, where are they? Like,
that's what I was doing. Yeah. And then they shut up. And then I was like, well, they shut up because they're like, they're all around me.
Right. Now they're like 10 yards away. Like you're hearing stuff in the brush.
Nope.
Oh man, it's crazy.
I had nothing on me. I was gonna beat them down with a stick. They weren't taking that deer. I'm telling you right now.
No chance. No chance.
I was losing a limb to get that deer out of there.
100%.
Literally, just pull out a knife and cut my arm off and give it to the coyotes so I could have the deer. I would do it.
You have to.
Here, chew on this for a while. I'm out. Peace. One arm dragged the deer out. I don't know how I would explain that, but
I mean, you'd figure it out at that point. It'd be worth it.
Start cutting fingers off and tossing them to them like treats.
It's worth it. Completely worth it.
The things you do to get your deer out. That'd be a good book.
That would be a good book.
Oh man.
Man, what a crazy couple weeks for you, man. Crazy couple weeks. Yeah, so man. Are you shutting it down for the season or what's happening now? Like what's your plan? I know you have a hunt coming up.
I normally don't shut it down, but I'll be honest with you. So as I was driving home, this year's been kind of a grind. I mean, it's always a grind, but I feel like this year it's been harder on my wife. My daughter is going through a little bit of a stage right now, and she's a bear. She's battling everything, and spending a week in Pennsylvania and then coming back and spending 3 full days at the Hagerman, which I didn't see my daughter for 3 days because I was up early and then home after she went to bed.
Right.
I was like, you know what? I'm okay. Like I have meat, it's been a couple years since I've had meat in the freezer. One deer for us is enough.
Right.
So, I made the commitment to her. I came home and I said, look, like I have a duck hunt coming up that I'm going to go on. I may go on like a late season muzzleloader hunt or something just to get out and take a walk in the woods. But I said, other than that, like I'm going to pack my stuff up and I'm going to shut it down for archery season and I'm just going to be present. And that made her day. So
yeah, it's good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a heck of a season though, man. You cannot beat that. Hopefully many more of those. But it's not often you get to shoot a 6-year-old buck. That's for sure. So.
I think the thing is, dude, it keeps you going to those long sits, and it even, I think hearing that too, like hopefully like for you and stuff, like when you go through a long day sit like that, when you like, it's one thing to say, dude, it can change in a second. Mm-hmm. But then when you go through it, then the following year, when you're sitting there all day, it's a lot easier to sit there all day when you go, dude, it changed in a second last year and it can literally do it again.
Right.
And the thing is we talk about those midday hunts.
It happened, man.
Two of the last 3 bucks I shot were between 10 and 2. Yeah. That was at 1:20 in the afternoon.
It's crazy.
He's out there looking around, just looking for doe.
Yeah, kill mature deer, man. This time of year, 10 to 2. It's just it. It is it. Like you can certainly kill them, in other morning, evening, whatever. But it just seems like that window, like they've settled down, they got back in their beds, and then 10 o'clock comes and they're up looking again.
Yeah.
So,
I'm a believer. I mean, I truly am.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a time to be in the stand this time of year. I really do.
Yeah,
do believe that.
For sure,
dude. That's it. That's all I got for you.
Yeah, that was good, man. That was good. It's exciting. Learned a lot. You've learned a lot. Got to share some of that. And like I said, we'll be sharing some stories for a long time to come. So
yeah, I know we're going to get into your season, probably in the next podcast. This has been a long one. And
mine might be a little long too.
Yeah, that's okay, man. I mean, I think it's important to share the experience no matter what it is. And,
it is.
Our seasons were very different this year. They just were very different. And where I've had, amazing joy and gratefulness, and been able to really kind of appreciate things. It's not always like that. And I think, your story kind of this year has been like that. So
Yeah.
I'm anxious to hear that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into it. When we started Rooted and we started like the This Is Hunting series, our video series, which I promise we'll get some videos out soon. But we will. We'll get
17 videos coming at you in one day.
They're coming. But when we started those things, our goal has always been to portray hunting like exactly what it is. And there is the highest of highs, which is what you've been able to experience this year. And there's some really low lows, which unfortunately I've been through those this year. And, a lot of people, everybody, it's easy to talk about the highs, right? Like anybody can talk about that. But I think what our goal was is when we have those lows, and I don't think that it's an accident they happen this year, because it's like, oh, we're going to do this. Like, God, whatever happens, we're putting it out there.
Yep.
And then it's like, well, we were laughing earlier, like, well, here you go. Like you can, here's like a part of hunting. Right. So, as tough as it is, like still some excitement just to be able to share that, because I know people will be able to relate to it. So
yeah, man,
we will get into that. So any other Rooted updates or anything else that we want to share? I don't have much else right now. We'll have our youth turkey hunt next spring, which we're actually working on already, which is awesome.
I know. Development's coming.
Yeah, we're working on some of that. You have a duck hunt coming. I have a duck hunt coming.
I know. When's your duck hunt?
Yeah.
When's your duck
hunt? My duck hunt, dude, I'm leaving this Sunday.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Up at the cabin?
Up the cabin. So there's four of us going.
Oh, you going out for like a week or what?
No, we're going up. We're going up on a Sunday afternoon, and then we'll hunt Monday morning. We'll hunt ducks and geese, and then in the afternoon we'll hunt pheasant. And then Tuesday morning, we'll hunt ducks and geese. And then Tuesday afternoon, we'll hunt pheasant and come home.
Love the pheasants. Love that. So I missed that.
Yeah, and it's like loaded up there with pheasants.
Is it? They stock it up there, or is it just natural?
Yeah, they stock it. Yeah. So, yeah, we went last year. We did that. He limited out both days.
I love pheasant, man. It's good eating, too. Pheasant's really good.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So that'll be fun just to, like, mix it up. Like, my cousin's coming, Nate's coming, and then this other guy that is from my cousin's work that like he actually was down in Texas, and then he moved here and has it hunted here since he came up because he doesn't have anywhere to hunt. So he's coming. So it should be like it'll just be a fun time. So I'm looking forward to just like I need a break from the deer grind. Like I just need to like shoot some guns and just like see some birds and just like enjoy it. So I'm excited.
Dude, that's going to be awesome, man. I'm excited for you. I know how much you love your duck hunting, your waterfowl.
I do.
I have no idea what I'm doing, dude. I need to get waders.
So did I tell you that I need to get waders?
Yeah, no, you said yours leaked.
So now I'm getting waders because I hiked into to hunt deer Saturday across the creek. Dude. And like on the first cross, I was like, that feels a little wet. Like that doesn't feel good, right? And it should. Then I hiked in, like, so I hike across the creek, and then I hiked down like 3/4 of a mile in my waders, and I'm like, it's dry, like we're good. And I come back across, and now both are feeling wet. I'm like, that doesn't feel good. I'm like, that must just because sometimes your waders, if you get in like really cold water, like they compress on you, and it feels wet, but it's just cold. It's just cold. So then when I got over there and I took them off to put my boots on, my pants and my socks were soaked.
That's horrible. What were the temps?
It was cold.
30s?
But yeah.
Oh, dude.
But I didn't wear my main socks in, and I had 2 other like layers of pants that I brought in, or I would have been toast. I would have been out. Can't hunt in that. Can't hunt with wet socks.
That would have been dangerous too.
Yeah.
That cold.
So you said new waders, and now I got to get new waders by this weekend. So
let me know what you get.
You know what I get?
Yeah, all I've been told is get neoprene. I don't know if that's true or not. Get neoprene waders.
Yeah, I haven't looked.
Get some warm boot waders. Get some Ventilate in there.
Yeah.
And then, dude, I need to get a shotgun. Like it's horrible. It's a mess. It's a mess. I'm gonna be out there like piecing it together. My first duck hunt ever. Going out with
So
like a
good.
pro too. He's like, oh yeah, get these shells. Yeah, it's Josh.
Yeah.
You know Josh.
Yeah,
been
of
on
course,
the
yeah.
podcast. He's like telling me what shells to get and everything. I'm like, dude, what waders do I get? Like, I have no idea what to do. What I'm doing here.
So good. I love it. It's gonna be awesome, dude.
We're gonna be
You're
camping out for 3 days.
Are you
2
really?
days. Yeah, camping
Dude,
out.
that's awesome. Dude,
Yeah.
you are gonna be so hooked, dude. I'm telling you, you're gonna come back and you'll be like, dude, why have I not been doing this my whole life? Like, it is just, it's awesome.
So I don't want to make you more jealous, but he Voxered me today.
About what?
He called down there to see, like, get the scoop on everything.
What's the scoop?
So he said they told him that there's already quite a few ducks and geese there.
What's quite a few?
I don't know, a lot. He said a lot.
A lot.
A lot. It's a completely non-pressured area. They hunt it once a year.
Jeez, dude.
He said so. The only pressure that these ducks are getting is coming down, like
Yeah, well, I was
on
gonna
the way
say
down.
the only disadvantage that you guys have down
Yeah.
in Texas is that these birds are getting blasted at all the way down.
Yeah,
That's the only disadvantage you have. But if they get down there and get settled in, I mean,
yeah. So
You guys-
that's what I guess
the
that's what he
amount
meant, right?
Yeah,
There's
well,
already
yeah.
a bunch of ducks and geese there. So
yeah, but you guys will be fine.
so I guess it's 2 days of a hunt. It's
Mm-hmm.
Friday we go down to orientation. We
Yeah.
go pick our spots, and then Saturday, Sunday we hunt. So
Nice. Yeah. Usually ducks, I mean, depending on where you're at, like you don't hunt really that long. Like up here, like you can hunt, we'll hunt a little longer, but like the first 30 minutes of light is like literally it.
so it's ducks and geese.
The geese could be a little bit different.
Yeah. So we can hunt both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll probably crush geese. Like,
Yeah. So
Ducks
Josh
are
said he's
good.
never shot a goose before.
really?
Yeah. So it'll be his
Surprising.
first time.
That's surprising. Yeah. Geese are not super hard. Ducks are tricky. But... Oh, fun, man.
I don't know, man.
You.
I'm just gonna wait till he says shoot, and then I'm gonna shoot. That's it.
all
That's
you
it.
can do.
That's all I need. I
Literally all
know.
you can do.
I can't identify a duck
Nope.
from I know what a mallard looks like. That's about
Yeah.
it.
Dude, just wait till he says shoot and then just start firing.
Yeah. Oh,
So
man.
good. All right, man. We got to get out
Yeah,
of
I
here.
know,
We
dude.
gotta
What a
get
long
outta here.
potty
That was a good
podcast we
one.
did here.
That was a
Yeah.
good one, though. That was a good one.
All right, brother. I appreciate you. We'll have to do another podcast on the duck hunts then that we had too. So
For
this-
sure.
we'll have a bunch of podcasts coming. So.
We got some coming up.
All right, everybody. Hey, go to our YouTube page, subscribe, because remember, if you subscribe, then you get notified when we have new videos coming out. Although this is hunting videos that are coming out, your phone will be getting pinged every 30 seconds.
All the time.
No, but go subscribe. Go to our Facebook page. Give us a like. Would really appreciate that. If you could just share it with somebody else that you think would enjoy our conversations, enjoy our content, and our community that we're creating here at Rooted. And I think that's about it, man. Instagram, Rooted Outdoors Instagram, and send us a message too if you're listening to this. So we love to connect with people and just share ideas and challenges and all kinds of stuff. So anything else, man?
I think that's it for now. I'm ready for bed.
Appreciate you. Go to bed, man. You got a long day
That's
tomorrow.
That's it, man.
All right, buddy.
I'll catch you
Talk to you
soon.
later.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with everything happening at Rooted Outdoors.